Hello, this is another cringy fanfiction. This is not safe for work, and male-on-male action. You have been warned. Meta Knight and Kirby walked hand in hand along the path, deciding for once to do a normal boyfriendy thing. It was Valentine's Day, and although they were spending time together, each had their minds elsewhere. Meta Knight wondered what it was that they should do, traditionally. Something romantic, maybe? Meanwhile, Kirby longed to break away from the masked warrior and play. Meta Knight was generally silent, and he had a very short attention span, but he held off, sensing that it was somehow his duty to continue holding his hand. He did not want to make him upset. Luckily, a small creature peeked out from the grass just then. Kirby only got a glimpse of it, but that was enough to send him dashing into the field. He heard Meta Knight call out to him from somewhere, but he dare not look, lest he lost sight of his new plaything. Finally he pounced, catching the small creature in his nubby arms and holding it tight. The grass just in front of him rustled, and he quickly popped it into his mouth. "Kirby, what was that all about?" Meta Knight panted, hands clenched at his sides. He relaxed a hair and gave him a suspicious look. "What have you got in your mouth?" Kirby did not respond, as his mouth was full, and backed away a little. "Give it!" the other demanded, annoyance in his tone once more. Without thinking, Kirby swallowed. Immediately he jumped into the air, light coming off of him as he spun wildly, and Meta Knight gasped. He was getting a new power? A few moments later, and Kirby floated back down to earth. Meta Knight stepped closer, curious about his new form. He sprouted a pair of wings and a halo that appeared above his head. He held a bow and a single heart-shaped arrow. Meta Knight did not miss a beat. "Wow, you look cute," he said in awe. Kirby blushed and smiled shyly, winking at him. Meta Knight just stared. Was this Kirby? Kirby never acted so flirtatious. He beckoned for Kirby to follow, and turned in the direction of the castle. "Come on, let's go to the courtyard and see what you can—" He cut short, feeling a sudden stabbing pain in his back. He whirled around to look at Kirby, who now looked quite mischievous, and yanked something out of his back. The arrow had a tiny droplet of blood on the tip. "Kirby, what are you—" He froze suddenly. His blood felt like fire racing through his veins. Color rushed to his cheeks, and a creeping warmth spread to his groin. "Kirby! Oh my!" It was getting difficult to stand. Whatever Kirby had poisoned him with, it was making him so horny. He gasped as another urgent wave passed through him, tightening every muscle until he felt like he was going to break. Kirby had drawn closer, watching closely as a tiny bump began to manifest itself between his legs. He blushed darker. "Kirby, you don't know what you've done. I won't be able to control myself. Oh God, why do you have to be so cute?" He could not stand watching those cheeks turn scarlet as his eyes scanned that particular region of his body he wished he would not look at. Finally his restraint weakened, and he tossed his mask aside, pulled Kirby in, and pressed their lips together. He wasted no time sliding the tip of his tongue against Kirby's lips until they hesitantly parted, allowing Meta Knight to dip his tongue inside and explore. Kirby squirmed at the odd sensation, letting his eyes fall shut as his own tongue was slowly coaxed into action. The wings on his back fluttered erratically, no doubt a sign of his excitement. Meta Knight pressed closer, and Kirby moaned into his mouth. His pulse quickened at the responses he got from the other. Already his erection was getting unbearable, a result of whatever was on the arrow, he assumed. He pushed up against Kirby's body, needing to feel some sort of friction on the aching appendage. "Oi!" Kirby gasped, surprised and embarrassed at how forward Meta Knight was being. He could feel it touching him, and it was so urgent. His face turned impossibly red. The contact was making him feel uncomfortable and put out, but He did not push him away now that he had gotten him so hot and bothered. Instead, he moved closer too, satisfied at the groan that escaped from Mennonite. His body felt weird. It was definitely this new power that was compelling him to act this way, that made him want to please the masked warrior. Mennonite continued rubbing against him, pleading in his voice as he breathed his name. Kirby slowly tilted his head, moving in for another kiss that was met with a satisfied sigh from the other's lips. Their tongues slid over one another, hot and wet, as they pulled back and dove in again. Kirby's face was embarrassingly red. He felt an unfamiliar feeling stir in between his legs and lashed onto it, pushing that area against Mennonite's erection on instinct, and it was rewarded with a jolt of pleasure. He stilted himself, surprised at how uncontrollable his reaction was. Mennonite also looked surprised, but pleasantly so. He kissed Kirby once again, tasting something new on his tongue. Lust. His excitement grew as their saliva mixed and their tongues tangled, loving the sweet, hot, desperate moans that escaped when he pushed his lower body forward. Kirby was not acting shy anymore, his inhibitions long gone now that he was excited like this. A stray thought niggled at the back of his mind, that Kirby was not himself, and he did not know what he was doing, but the stronger sensation of pleasure overpowered his guilt, and he concluded that he was going to do this. He'd have to do it fast, before the arrow's powers wore off. Without warning, he shoved Kirby over onto the grass and climbed on top of him. Before the other could protest, he shoved 2 gloved fingers into his mouth. Kirby did not move for a moment, but Mennonite was not about to waste any time. He started pumping his fingers in and out, overjoyed at the sight of Kirby's blush darkening. Eventually he closed his eyes and moaned around the digits, somehow finding pleasure in being treated this way. It was agonizing to watch and still control himself, and even worse when he felt Kirby's tongue brush against his finger and play with stitching on his glove. His cheeks colored, but he swallowed the lump in his throat and continued. With his other hand he reached down and began touching himself, already fully erect and dripping. "You're so cute," he breathed, and Kirby made a soft noise around his fingers as he began to suck. To keep himself from losing his mind, Mennonite continued speaking to him. "Have you done something like this before? Do you know what I'm going to do to you?" Kirby paused for a second, then shook his head. He resumed his suckling. "I'm going to put this," he gestured downwards, "inside of you. It might hurt a little bit, but then it'll feel really good." Why was he explaining all this? Well, he wouldn't want anyone to panic once they got down to the nitty-gritty. That would be bad. "You don't exactly have one yet, because you're not of age, but as you may have noticed, you're very sensitive." He brushed the tip of his penis across the area to demonstrate, eliciting a loud moan. "There." Popping his fingers out of Kirby's mouth, he shifted downwards and began teasing Kirby's tiny hole. Kirby whimpered pathetically, making the other's breath hitch. He resisted the urge to push his fingers in too quickly just to hear more from the little puff. It was driving him mad. Taking it slow. Carefully, he eased in one finger, then paused, gauging Kirby's reaction. He looked slightly uncomfortable, but nothing too serious yet. He slipped in another, this time hearing a slightly pained noise, and pushed in and out a few times so he'd get used to it. Kirby relaxed after a minute, so Mennonite dared a third, and Kirby cried out and squeezed his eyes shut. Mennonite shushed him gently, his free hand already groping the area between his legs until he was moaning again. It would have to do. He could not wait any longer. He quickly pulled his fingers out and grabbed the base of his shaft, positioning his penis at his entrance. He slipped it in. Kirby squirmed as his insides were being stretched even more, wings twitching underneath him at the stinging pain. Mennonite could only stop for a moment before he let out a ragged breath. "You're so tight." Kirby did not respond, not like he needed to. Meta Knight pushed forward. The pink puffball gasped as he felt it moving inside of him. Shallow, gentle thrusts at first. But one sharp movement struck something he did not even know was there, and he cried out in pleasure. Meta Knight had found the sweet spot. He adjusted himself to make sure he'd hit it consistently, and set a steady pace. Kirby moaned as Meta Knight pounded him roughly, panting with his mouth open. He pulled out almost completely, then plunged back in, hard, and Kirby let out an unexpected "Hoo-yah!" as his body jolted with pleasure. I think I'm getting close," Meta Knight said, and it was evident from the volume of Kirby's cries that he was as well. He picked up the pace a bit. He came hard inside Kirby, and though Kirby had no way of ejaculating as well, he shuddered and collapsed, signifying that he too was finished. Meta Knight knew that if they were caught like that, he'd have a lot of explaining to do, but he could not bring himself to care. Kirby's angel powers were wearing off, and the wings retreating into his body, much like how Meta Knight's penis was retreating into his. He wrapped his arms around the little pup and began to doze off, his body still buzzing from the orgasm a moment before, but he did not miss the smile that graced Kirby's lips as he snuggled up and fell asleep too.